Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face, my card making space. I got my heaters on full blast because it's cold here in my garage. For those that aren't aware, I live in Saskatchewan. I craft in my garage. It's my card making space. We make it work. I got heaters, space heater, garage heater, doing the things. Anyway, couple holiday cards for this year's holiday card series. I will have a link, as always, to my playlist at the very end of the video where I'll just continue to add to it. I generally will make holiday cards right up until Christmas, sometimes even a little bit beyond, depending. Because anything extra I create is for next year. So we're just going to keep doing our thing. And yeah, I'm going to do some Copic coloring, some 3D embossing with an embossing folder, ink blending, splatter, bling, roughing up cardstock, all the things I love to do. As always, I will have links to everything I used in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links and end up placing an order, I do get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. It's what helps pay the bills, keeps the heater running, keeps the videos coming. And yeah, that's it. Let's get into the card making. So I'm using this little stamp set. This is a little mini stamp and die set. And this little set does come in the Simon Says Stamp Gingermas Wonder Box, like their Advent calendar. I'll post a link to that. I don't have it, like the actual box, etc., to show. But as of doing this voiceover, it's still available. So I'll just post a link to it if anyone wants to check it out. But I've got the little stamp set and it's super cute and I wanted to use it. So I'm going to stamp this little gingerbread in his cup of hot cocoa onto some Neenah Desert Storm cardstock. So I'm lining up the stamp and I am stamping it with Simon's Intense Black ink, and I'm not worried about getting it stamped perfectly. Could stamp it a couple times if I wanted like a perfect impression, but I'm going to heat emboss on this image again. So we'll come back to that. So I want to make sure I'm not moving the stamp. I'm leaving it in my MISTI, and I cleaned it off after I was done stamping it, and then we will revisit it once I'm done coloring. So for my coloring, this time I'm using Copic Markers. I have done a bajillion. I honestly have no idea what the number is, but it's a lot. A lot of videos over the years using Copic Markers. And y'all have seen me do, I have done videos. I use Ola markers and Spectrum Noir Tri-Blends and Altenew alcohol markers. They're all great. Do you need more than one brand? Heck no. Did I need more than one brand? Heck no. Do I like getting new markers and playing with them? Yep. Anyway, I was like, I haven't used my Copics in a while, and I do have pretty much all the colors because, you know, I got problems. And so I'm using them. But you could use any alcohol markers for this. It all works. This first little bit is normal speed. Like, I haven't sped it up in editing. It's going to speed up like right about now. And then I'm going to color super, super speedy. I don't color this fast. The first little bit was real. That's the speed at which I actually color at. This is just sped up in editing because I ain't got the time. It makes my videos, 10 times longer if I kept it in, and then it would take forever to upload, and plus I have nothing exciting to share. All this coloring was pretty basic. I did a kind of warmer tone for my little gingerbread man, and then I did my kind of go-to brown combo for the cocoa, and then deeper reds. I forgot the handle there for a second, and then remembered it just in time. So a bit of a deeper red combo for the mug. And then for the little peppermint candies and the candy cane, I just did, this is my other go-to like Copic red combo, is R29, R27, R24. Like same old. Nothing too exciting really. And then darkest to lightest, that's just what works for me. But if you're newer to alcohol markers, lightest to darkest gives you a lot more control. But then once you get comfortable with it, you can do whatever you want. And that's what I do. So once I was done the alcohol marker coloring, I just took a white color pencil and filled in all the white areas. Again, didn't do anything crazy. You could build up more depth, bring in like a gray to do some shading, things like that. didn't bother. I don't really color a whole lot. That's the one thing I don't use very often anymore, other than things like this, is my color pencils. People have been asking if I'll go back to like doing videos using them. Genuinely, the reason I don't is because the pressure you need to use coloring with them, and it hurts my hands. Like coloring with everything else, alcohol markers, the watercoloring, etc., does not aggravate my hands at all, but using color pencils and the pressure, oof, like I had to stop. So anyway, after I was done coloring, I tested everything first. I used my anti-static powder tool and I just poured embossing powder over the image just to double check that nothing was going to cling to where it's not supposed to. And then I lined up the cardstock right back in my MISTI. The stamp was still in the same place, so I can ink up the image with clear embossing ink. And I stamp it a couple times, and then I'm going to stamp or cover this with some detail white embossing powder. And I've talked about this many times. I heat emboss after I've colored in an image with alcohol markers. One, alcohol markers do not play friendly with heat embossed images. There's something in heat embossing that just reacts with the alcohol markers and eventually can ruin your markers. So I don't recommend it. That said, I also wouldn't do it with a specifically white heat embossing because alcohol markers would just cover all that white embossing unless you wanted to be like really, really slow and finicky with your coloring to avoid touching the white heat embossing. And I do not. I can't make it clear enough how little patience I have just in regular life. So taking the extra step to just line everything up, keep it lined up in the MISTI, stamp it when it's done, heat emboss, great. It works. It can be a little nerve-wracking, because it's like you've already done all the work coloring and then to, restamp and heat emboss. It's like, but as long as you take the time to make sure everything's lined up from the beginning, so far so good. And I'm getting better at it. I used to never do this because I was like, again, the impatient part of me. But you guys might see me do this more often because I really love the look of it. Like heat embossed images like this I don't know, this totally changed the look of this little image and I thought it was super cute. So once I was done my heat embossing, and I did everything twice, I try to do that as often as possible because it's like if I'm going to be making something, might as well make a couple. And I used a little coordinating wafer die to die cut them. And then I pulled out the Gingerbread Man embossing folder from Simon Says Stamp because that was kind of fitting with this little image. And this one comes with a little wafer die, which I did end up using. I wasn't sure, but we'll get to it. And this embossing folder isn't as deep as some, and especially because I'm using the Neenah Desert Storm cardstock again, it doesn't show up very much on camera. You can see it a little better in real life, like the actual detail. But if you did it on almost anything other than Desert Storm, it would show up just fine. I'm just saying because like when I was editing this, I was like, man, it looks like I did nothing after a bit, but we're going to enhance a bit of the detail. Also, I didn't want it to be super busy because the main focus is the stamped image I did. So I embossed these panels with that embossing folder, and then I trimmed them down to knocked off like 1/4 of an inch off each side. So it ends up being like 3 3/4 by 5 inches. Yeah, it's kind of one of my standard sizes when I'm layering things. So I trimmed them down, and then I pulled out one of the newer trios of Pawsitively saturated inks. I think this was just from the newest release, the November release. The Cookie, Gingerbread, and Cocoa trio one. Again, everything was just coming together for this one. And also the color is, like with everything. Do I need all the new inks? No. Do I need all the colors? No. Do I want them all? Yes. New browns. Woo. Anyway, I used the gingerbread color because it was fitting and a blending brush, and I blended it around, and I sped up the blending too because I'm not doing anything like special. The only thing I did is I went around the edges, with a bit heavier hand, and then whatever was left on the brush, and I wasn't pressing with the brush, I was running it over the rest of the cardstock, so it was just picking up sort of the raised little gingerbread just to enhance those details a bit, so you can see them a bit better. So really simple. Just gives it that little extra something. And then I went in with the darkest shade, which was cocoa, just around the edges, because these inks, like a lot of them, will soften. You can just see it already, that panel that was on the left, like as the ink dries, it softens and dries back a bit. So this just enhances it, and this will soften and dry back as well, so it won't be quite as intense as it looks. And then, of course, we're going to add splatter, because that's just what I do. So I put these backgrounds into my splat box. I've just got my permanent white gouache, and I put a little bit of it onto my little palette, and then I got my little fan brush wet with water to thin this down a bit to get it to a good splatterable consistency, and then splattered this all over these backgrounds because it's a winter theme, you know, a holiday card. And I don't even know why I bother trying to like explain why when it comes to splatter. Honestly, usually I think a lot of you that follow me consistency or watch, you know, my videos consistently, I have to explain more why I don't use splatter, you know, and reassure everyone that I'm still feeling okay. Anyway, I did die cut some scraps of the same Desert Storm cardstock with the little coordinating wafer die that comes with that Gingerbread Man folder, and just lined them up in the folder, ran them through my machine so that they are embossed. So they've got all their little details. And then after I had embossed them, I took the same gingerbread ink and just a smaller blending brush and blended these around the edges, you know, just to give them a little something. And then the whole time I was making these, I was like, man, I need to get in the kitchen and make some gingerbread cookies. I make good gingerbread cookies. And I use like the dark molasses when I make mine so that mine are intense and I love. Anyway, it's on the to-do list. Because the whole time I was making these from paper, I was like, I want real ones. Anyway, back to the cards. To enhance their little embossed details, after I was done the ink blending, I just used a white gel pen. You could use things like, and it would be really cute, like Nouveau drops, you know, those sorts of embellishments. The only thing to remember with those sorts of things is if you've done something like this and you've done ink blending, test it out on a scrap first. Like take your cardstock, add some ink blending, let it dry, and then add, you know, your Nouveau drops or whatever, and see if they change color. Because sometimes as they're drying, they'll absorb that ink, and then they won't. If you were using, say, specifically like white Nouveau drops, it could absorb that color, and then it'll turn kind of a yellowy brown color. Not pretty. So just test it out, or die cut it from just regular brown cardstock, emboss it, and then you can, you know, zhuzh it up with your little Nouveau drops. That would look super cute. But yeah, I just used my white gel pen. It was quick and simple. I just traced the you know, raised embossed edges with my white gel pen. And then I just took one of my Copic markers just to enhance the little bow tie. Just keeping it simple, you know? Which, again, side note, with my gingerbread cookies, that's the only time I actually like royal icing. I'm not a fan of royal icing. It just blech. But on gingerbread cookies, especially like I said, mine with the dark molasses that are really intense, the royal icing is like chef's kiss perfection. Anyhow, this is not a baking channel. This is card making. I'm just distracting myself. So after I was done zhuzhing up my little gingerbread men, I pulled out just a piece of red cardstock, used my anti-static powder tool on it, and then stamped one of the sentiments from the set with clear embossing ink. And then I'm going to coat those with the same detail white embossing powder, tap off the excess, melt this with my heat tool. Once everything is smooth and shiny and melted, I'll then take my just microfiber cloth and wipe away that excess anti-static powder. And then the little coordinating die set has wafer dies for the two big sentiments in the set. So I made sure to grab the proper coordinating wafer die. There we go. And then die cut those sentiments. I'll come back to those snowflakes in a minute. I also took there's a couple little tiny sub-sentiments in the set. So I took the little Merry Christmas one and I stamped it on just some white cardstock with Simon's cranberry ink, and then just used my paper trimmer to trim these into little sentiment strips. Just eyeballed it, trimmed them out, just simple, because these are just going to be a little extra. So once I had those trimmed down, I can start getting my card fronts assembled. And that snowflake, I used in a previous video. This is the Heartfelt Snowflake wafer die, and I just die cut that from white cardstock, and had laid everything out, kind of figured out my little layout. That's another reason why I like doing more than one card, because I can kind of fiddle and get things where I want it, and then I can just follow that to actually adhere it. So nothing's adhered on that one in the upper corner, but figured out my little layout, and then I can just follow that. So I'm going to adhere everything, or the snowflake, with craft tacky glue. And then I pulled out some baker's twine, of course. I'm going to wrap that around, reverse tweezers, tie it in a bow like always. I end up trimming the tails off this one quite a bit because this baker's twine was actually wrapped around like a chipboard piece. I'm almost out of this stuff. For those, again, that know of my obsession with baker's twine, specifically the Doodlebug brand baker's twine. That one is my favorite. And I don't think they make it anymore, because I went searching the other day, and you can find a couple of, like, the red and the black and the gray, but the other colors, I don't think Doodlebug makes it anymore, and I'm a little bit heartbroken, and I'm in mourning, because it is my favorite. It's not too thin, it's not too thick. I'm like Goldilocks with baker's twine. I'm very particular. And the Doodlebug one is my favorite, and I'm really sad. Like, wah, because I'm starting to run out, especially my favorite colors. Anyway, after I'd added the baker's twine, I popped up all the other elements with a variety of foam squares. Just used thinner ones for most of the main elements, and then I used a couple of thicker ones on that little die cut gingerbread man cookie, and just popped all the different pieces into place on these card fronts. And then once I've got all of my little pieces adhered, I took some brown cardstock. This is Concord 9th nutmeg cardstock, and I'm gonna rough up the edges. And there's a couple ways you can do this, and I'm gonna show both. So I'm using scissors here first. If you do this, be very, very careful. Be very aware. Because, I've got my scissors wide open like this, and you just run the edges on the cardstock, and it will give this awesome, tattered, ripped up edge. But you just be careful, be aware, because depending on how sharp your scissors are, you do not want to slip and slice yourself up. So the tool I show in a second, much safer, better option. Just kind of depends on what you're doing. And it also depends on the cardstock. This cardstock's not super heavyweight, so you see me when I'm roughing it up, I'm holding the cardstock close to where I'm roughing it up so that the scissors can't slip. Because, again, you just got to be aware. And I say it because I tell myself this, because I am a clumsy person. I don't pay attention. I get impatient. But certain things I really, when I'm, mucking around with my scissors, don't want to cut myself. Anyway. Another option is the Tim Holtz paper distressor. I've shown this in a ton of videos. I've had one of these for well over a decade. I ended up having to repurchase it because I misplaced mine, and it's a great little tool, because all you got to do is, just like I show, run it along the cardstock. It does the same thing. It won't get as roughed up as using straight on scissors the way I do, but if you apply enough pressure with it and go back and forth, it will, tear up those edges, and it's just a fun thing I like to do sometimes. Yeah, it just gives it a fun little edge. So I made a grand old mess. This does get messy because you're, roughing up these edges. So you create all these little paper fibers. They get absolutely everywhere. Everywhere. I don't mind it. I just, brush it all into a pile basically, and then stick it in the trash, and it's good to go. But just another thing to be aware of. I don't know why though. I enjoy making this mess. Same with the splatter. I don't know. It brings me joy, just mucking around. So once I'd roughed up all of those edges and then cleaned up that mess, I pulled out my card bases, which are top folding A2 white note cards, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I'm going to ink up another sentiment with the cranberry ink. And I had a paper fiber on there. Like I said, they get everywhere. So remove that before actually stamping the sentiment onto the insides of the cards. And I had extra little gingerbread men to add to the inside as well, just to, finish everything off. So after stamping the sentiment, I can adhere these little guys with the craft tacky glue. And that's going to finish off the insides of the cards. So once those are adhered, I can then reinforce the fold with my bone folder. So just because again, my card bases almost always, unless they're color cardstock, are Simon's 120-pound smooth white cardstock. So I reinforce that fold with just the side of my bone folder, and then adhere the card fronts to the card base with craft tacky glue. Once those are adhered, I'm going to add just a little bit of bling, you know, just to finish it off. So these are the Simon Says stamp, and again, the containers. Love it. Love it. The Pawsitively Dazzling Gems in Peppermint. So it's just a mix of red and clear. And again, it was kind of fitting for this color combo and these cards. So sprinkled those onto both of the card fronts. And then once I was happy with what I had going on, just picking them up with my little embellishment wand and adhering them into place with craft tacky glue. And then I just got to let the glue dry, and these cards are complete. So, like I mentioned in the intro, I will post links to all of the supplies in the description box below. You can just expand that. It'll all be there, along with a link to my blog posts, social medias, etc., etc. It'll all be there. And thanks so much, as always, for hanging out with me. I very much appreciate it. Thumbs upping and commenting, it does help a ton. It just tells the robot overlords you like what you see and helps with the algorithms and all the unseen forces behind the scenes. And I very much appreciate it. And subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!